Cap sur la transition, heading for the transition. Let's focus on environmental public policies. This is the IDDRI podcast. It happened in spring 2023. After years and years of negotiations, states finally reached an agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity in areas beyond national jurisdictions. This agreement, also known as BBNJ Treaty, establishes a process to create air-based management tools, including marine protected areas in the high seas, which help protect ecosystem and species, restore marine life, and increase resilience to climate change. Remember, we already told you about those high seas marine protected areas. This was in a previous episode. Creating high seas MPAs is essential to facilitate the implementation of the 30 by 30 target adopted under the Convention on Biological Diversity's Kunming-Montreal Agreement, a target that calls for the conservation of 30% of Earth's land and sea by the year 2030. As the entire ocean community is currently mobilizing to prepare for the future implementation of the agreement, IDDRI is looking into the question, under what conditions can marine areas on the high seas be truly protected? A question so crucial that it alone deserves a new episode. And to answer it, I'm with Klaudija Cremers, Senior Research Fellow, International Ocean Governance in IDDRI's Ocean team. Here we go. Hi, Klaudija.
Hi, Sophie.
First, I think we must clarify that these marine protected areas, or MPAs, do not really yet exist formally in the high seas. We're talking about future MPAs, right?
Indeed, it's important to clarify that in the last few decades, we've seen an increase in the number of MPAs in national waters. However, experience on the high seas remains very limited. Only a handful of MPAs have been established by members of regional organizations in the Antarctic and in the Northeast Atlantic. So the BBNJ Treaty creates a global process to establish marine protected areas in the high seas. And as of today, when we're recording this podcast in December 2024, 104 states and the European Union have signed the agreement and 15 states have ratified it. The international community hopes to achieve the 60 ratifications required for it to enter into force in June 2025, when France is organizing the UN Ocean Conference in Nice. Mm-hmm. At the same time, some states and other stakeholders are already preparing for implementation challenges of the treaty and are preparing proposals for the first high seas MPAs.
Yeah, they're preparing because it's quite a long process. We saw that. For these future high sea marine areas to be truly protected and therefore play their role, they will need to be monitored, controlled.
Exactly. That's a good point. A key condition to ensure the success of future high seas marine protected areas is to develop effective monitoring, control, and surveillance, or shortly MCS, of human activities.
And the technologies to ensure this monitoring do exist already.
Exactly. In the last decade, we've seen that traditional approaches to MCS, such as onboard observers, logbooks, and surveillance vessels and aircrafts, have been supplemented by a range of new technological tools, such as satellite technology and artificial intelligence. And these tools and services are provided by a variety of actors. Mm-hmm. So we see that these wide range of emerging technologies and services offer cost-effective and accessible methods for conducting MCS activities on the high seas. And in addition, these technological tools can bring a significant added value to the implementation of management plans of future high seas MPAs. So they could, for example, help by optimizing resource allocation and providing near real-time insights into suspected illegal activities at sea.
This is very concrete, and here we're going to listen to a specialist in these technologies to give us some examples of what they do. You called him a few days ago, Klaudija. Please listen to Ted Schmitt from the Allen Institute for AI, based in Seattle, United States.
In a traditional marine protected area, say coastal MPA, you have patrols, you have communities, you have people that can see what's happening and monitoring. You can even do coastal radar and other sensing, both human and technology sensing of what's happening to keep basically keep eyes on the marine protected area. In the case of high seas MPAs, you really don't have that. So you really have to be able to monitor remotely, monitor from a distance, to do things like detect fishing, detect rendezvous, transfers between vessels. We do have a lot of satellite constellations and new types of sensors being put in space all the time. Most recently, radio frequency and hyperspectral sensors have been launched. I fully expect there will be additional ones. The interesting thing with that is that you're producing very large amounts of data. And no matter how many human experts you have to look at all of that data, they couldn't possibly process it to provide the monitoring necessary. And this is where AI comes in. It basically captures that expert knowledge of what it looks like to be fishing or trawling or whatever the behavior is that you're trying to identify. It captures that knowledge in an algorithm, an AI algorithm, that can then be run 24/7 to monitor the area and detect the kind of activity that needs to be detected that's counter to whatever the MPA rules are. We particularly, for instance, focus on the global south and the many challenges they face, particularly with illegal fishing, making sure that we can get this really powerful technology in their hands where it would otherwise be unaffordable. This really gives the ability for the decision makers and the monitors to have eyes on the MPA to make sure that the rules are enforced.
Very interesting details from Ted Schmitt, who is the Senior Director of Conservation at the Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence. In this case, the Institute is a non-profit organization, but more generally, Klaudija, who are the actors who provide those technologies? And is there anyone who coordinates or even controls the way these tools are used?
That's a very good question. And we see that beyond national administrations, there are a diversity of actors that provide MCS tools and data. They also conduct analysis and develop capacity building and transfer of marine technologies. And so these actors are instrumental in visualizing what is going on in the ocean and can support states and international bodies to properly manage future high seas MPAs. So, for example, private companies often collaborate with states and intergovernmental organizations to provide products and services based on artificial intelligence, big data solutions, cloud computing, and skilled human resources. However, as you can imagine, not all states have the budget to pay companies for these tools and services. And this is where nonprofit actors like AI2 come in. They, for example, facilitate access to data, capacity building, and conduct needs assessments. Several international MCS platforms and networks strengthen cooperation and coordination on MCS at a global, regional, or sectoral level.
IDDRI's ocean team, including you, Klaudija, published a study to provide insights and recommendations to all the stakeholders preparing for the creation of marine protected areas on the high seas. What are the key lessons that you have learned on the role of emerging technologies for these MPAs to be a success?
Yeah, so our report draws on lessons learned from existing experiences with MPAs in national waters and on the high seas governance. We think this report is very important because we often hear that satellite technology will really save us, will ensure we will be able to monitor, implement, and enforce high seas MPAs. But our report demonstrates that technology alone will not be enough. We have identified 5 policy and technical measures that will be essential to operationalize technology and to ensure the effective management of future high seas MPAs. So firstly, closing capacity gaps. So we see that not all states have the capacity to monitor their vessels in the high seas. And here, non-profit organizations can help here, or exactly, or profit actors can help states by donating technology or expertise. Secondly, cooperation for patrols at sea need to be developed. So we've seen that patrols at sea will always be necessary to control maritime areas due to its strong deterrent effect. We can not only rely on satellite technology. However, technology can help to target and reroute patrols, and states conduct joint patrols at sea. The third measure is to strengthen port state controls. So we see that flag states often have limited control capacity, and they can rely on controls in ports to adopt global minimum standards. And the fourth measure is to reform national judicial systems to adapt them to technology development. So very concrete examples that images coming from satellite technology are, for example, not always accepted as sole evidence in courts, and there's a need for deterrent sanctions. And then the last complementary measure that we've identified is that we have to ensure this information sharing. So there are already existing regional and sectoral organizations with a mandate on the high seas that collect information on human activities. However, this information is not always shared, even though we know that information sharing can reduce costs and enhance MCS coverage.
Thank you so much, Klaudija, for those explanations. And of course, the entire study can be consulted on IDDRI's website. I remind those who listen to us that you are Klaudija Cremers, a senior research fellow in IDDRI's Ocean team. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Sophie.
This is the end for today, end of this episode of Heading for the Transition. I hope that it will have provided useful insights into understanding the challenges of protecting high seas marine protected areas. You can find and listen to all the IDDRI podcasts on its website. Till the next episode, look after yourself and our planet.